Hey guys, this is the grand finale for Bella and Kath's story. They've spent their entire youth together over the past 10 years, but will they make it in the end? Also, please look forward to my next series, The Professor is My Stepsister.
We used to be best friends. We used to fake date just to blind the public eye. And then we crashed into each other, becoming lovers in a wild night heavy with intoxicating sweetness. You thought this love story had finally hit a sweet resolution. No. The very second dawn spiked through the dark, my own hands, once again, shoved Kath away. We're just messing around. Ken and I are the ones who are real. Kath is just my best friend. Nothing else. A sharp, painful grip suddenly clamped onto my elbow, forcing me to stand straight. Ken stepped into my line of sight, his usual sassy mask entirely discarded. He quickly shielded me, masterfully steering my mother inside the villa to pack her luggage. Drop that dying expression, Bella. You chose to act as a shield for your mother. If you unravel right now, everything Kath suffocated through last night turns into a waste of damn time.
He roughly pulled my trembling hand onto his forearm, recreating the arrogant, untouchable posture of a billionaire couple for the public eye. Keep playing the part, my newlywed wife. Lock your jaw and stay lucid. Ken's raw, cruel logic acted like a bucket of ice water poured straight onto my panic. I swallowed the rust taste of blood in my throat, straightened my spine, and marched forward alongside him. Welcome to part 2 of the prison. Behind the closed doors of our luxury penthouse, Ken and I mapped out a separate lives arrangement. But the hollow peace was short-lived. The craving for Kath was a living entity, clawing at my ribs every time the clock struck midnight. Whenever the heavy scent of her strawberry memory hit my brain too violently, I lost control, grabbing my motorcycle keys to transform into a shadow. I became an expert at maintaining a safe distance, parking half a block away and tailing her cab just to watch her third-floor window light up. I brainwashed myself, lying that I was merely shielding a childhood best friend from afar. It was a cowardly, pathetic lie. I didn't dare step into the light to face her fractured eyes. But from the darkness, I kept my vigil, anchoring my ruined soul to the only girl left alive who could save it. Dinner at the family estate was bathed in a lavish yet frigid amber light. Sitting beside Ken in an elegant dress and a measured smile, I played the flawless, obedient daughter. My mother beamed, plating food for Ken, before bustling into the kitchen for dessert, leaving the three of us stranded in a heavy silence. Clink. My father set down his wine glass, lifting sharp, predatory eyes. Now that your mother is inside, let's talk business. The wedding is over. Next month, both of you will arrange your schedules to undergo IVF. The child must carry the pure bloodlines of both dynasties. Ken and I froze. As panic spiked, I opened my mouth to fight back, but my father's cold smirk instantly shredded my words. Save the theatrical panic. Do you honestly think your pathetic attempts to hide your sexuality, your little bridal suite heist, and that cheap prop ring swap slipped past me? Bella, who do you think leaked your dating evidence to force this corporate marriage? It was me. He knew everything. He knew I loved women. He knew Ken was gay. And he had calmly pulled the strings, reducing us to mere puppets on his chessboard of capital interest. I don't care who you sleep with behind closed doors, but the public face of this empire must remain immaculate. Agree to the IVF, deliver an heir, and play the mart. Do that, and I will guarantee your little model friend Kath an international breakthrough. Otherwise, a single snap of my fingers permanently butchers her career. He glanced toward the kitchen at my mother's frail silhouette. Your mother has a heart condition. Do you want to detonate this bomb with your own hands, kill your mother, and drag that model down to hell with you? My chest constricted, twisting in an agonizing, suffocating grip. That very night, the sheer suffocating weight pushed me into the driving rain of the city. I secretly tracked my way to Kath's apartment complex. I refused to unilaterally dictate her freedom and her future. I just wanted to stand from a distance, catch a fleeting glimpse of her, and silently disappear. But destiny is a cruel comedian. Kath stepped out, holding an umbrella, intending to drop off the trash. Her gaze swept through the downpour, and her footsteps dead halted the instant her eyes locked onto my drenched form. I awkwardly snapped my face away, reaching to spark the ignition and bolt. But Kath was faster. She hurled her umbrella into the rain, sprinting through the sheets of water to violently grab both of my hands on the handlebars. "Bella, don't you dare run! How much longer are you going to keep running from me?" My proud, cold armor completely shattered. I killed the bike, stepped down, and buried my face into her shoulder. Weeping, I told her about the corporate shackles, my mother's fading health, and the transactional contract my father had laid out on the dinner table. My lifelong compliance bartered for her international sky of freedom. Kath listened in absolute silence, her tears washing into the freezing rain. She didn't unleash her fury. She didn't scream like the nights before. After a suffocating, endless stretch of quiet, she gently cupped my face, lifting it up to offer a brilliant smile that was excruciatingly painful to look at. "I accept the opportunity, Bella. We cannot beat this hand. I refuse to watch you get incinerated, and I will not carry the weight of your mother's life on my shoulders. I will go abroad." She traced her fingers down my cheek one last time, tender and reverent. That night was more than enough to account for the 10 years of our youth. Let's let each other go like adults, Bella. Cleanly. I will chase my dream, and you will fulfill your obligation. This way, it's better for both of us. We stood wrapped in each other's arms amid the pouring rain, a final embrace stripped of frantic lust or toxic jealousy, leaving only an agonizing understanding and a peaceful surrender. It turns out the definitive end of an unforgettable love story isn't always a desperate, collective escape. Sometimes it's using your own hands to push the other person toward a limitless sky, while you smile, turn around, and walk straight back into your luxurious, dark cage. But we didn't instantly turn our backs. We granted each other one final luxury. 24 hours completely severed from the rest of the world were entirely wiped from our universe. Neither of us was allowed to mention them. We were just two raw souls, stubbornly clinging to one another to harbor our final, fractured pieces of happiness. As dawn broke, last night's rain gave way to a crisp, melancholic atmosphere. I carried Kath on the back of my motorcycle, the roar of the engine slicing through the city's silence. Sitting behind me, she wrapped both arms around my waist, squeezing so tightly it felt as though she wanted to engrave her entire body into my back, pressing her face against my shoulder to hunt for any familiar warmth beneath my leather jacket. We drifted through old streets and pulled up to a roadside, retro neon diner, ordering a stack of pancakes and a cup of hot black coffee, just like the days we used to skip class, staying warm in the corners of those red leather booths. Kath always kept her vintage film camera by her side. Her lens no longer sought out glamorous runways. It was locked onto a single target. Me. She captured every single second. The relentless click-clack of the shutter echoed over and over. Kath took photos of me clumsily cutting the pancakes, of me subconsciously frowning at the passing crowd through the steam-fogged glass, and of me turning my face away to hide the tears spilling over. She wanted to freeze time. By afternoon, we returned to her rented apartment, making a complete mess in her small kitchen to bake an apple tart. Both of us were incredibly clumsy. Flour flew everywhere, dusting Kath's hair and cheeks white until she looked like a scruffy little cat. I burst out laughing, and instantly, Kath raised her camera and snapped a shot. She smiled brilliantly through the lens, but I could see her shoulders trembling as she choked back her sobs. We ate the ruined tart together, its burnt edges mingled with the sweetness of cinnamon apples and the bitter sting of our parting, creating a suffocating aftertaste on the tip of my tongue. Before sunset bled into the sky, I kicked the engine over again, driving her out to a beach on the outskirts of the city. The coastal wind whipped violently through our tangled hair. We walked along the smooth sand, letting the freezing Atlantic tide wash over our feet,
Kath locked her fingers tightly with mine, her eyes anchored out at sea where the horizon was staining a deep crimson like spilled wine. The sheer sweetness of every touch only seemed to sharpen the sadness inside us. We knew beautifully well that once the sun dipped below the water, once darkness swallowed this day, we would never belong to each other again. The final stop of our runaway journey was a narrow red brick alleyway tucked deep inside the old historic district, the exact place where we had met for the first time all those years ago. Back then, I was a frail kid, isolated by the local bullies, left with nothing to do but curl up and weep in a dark corner behind the school. It was Kath, a scrawny little girl with blazing, radiant eyes, who had fiercely charged out, aggressively sicking a stray dog onto those kids to shield me. Do you remember? Kath stood beside me, softly whispering under the amber glow of the streetlight. I promised you that day I would always protect you from monsters. I turned to look at her, the tears defying my grip now as they fell uncontrollably down my face. My throat tightened into a painful knot as I choked out. But this time, neither you nor I can protect each other from the biggest monster of all. That monster is my family. Kath didn't answer. She simply stepped forward and pulled me into a gentle embrace. Our shadows stretched long against the pavement, lonely and shattered as the night officially collapsed upon us, opening the final, desperate hours of our 24-hour countdown. The red brick alleyway faded behind us as we retreated into her apartment. The moment the door latch clicked shut, an absolute, suffocating silence consumed the space. We quietly threw ourselves into each other's arms, embracing with a raw, visceral longing that was deeply protective and heavy with unspoken regret. Clothes stripped away in the stark darkness. But the universe always delivers its most brutal punchlines. When I opened my eyes to a stray beam of light cutting through the curtain, the space beside me had long since gone freezing cold. Kath was gone. The apartment was hollow, except for a single object left on the bedside table was her vintage camera, heavy with a completely finished roll of film inside. 24 hours of smiles, tears, and our entire youth frozen forever within it. Tucked underneath the lens was a small, torn piece of paper. I picked it up with a trembling hand. My world is inside this. Now I'm leaving my world in your hands. Live a good life. I collapsed back onto the empty mattress, clutching the cold metal of the camera tightly against my ribs, sobbing silently into the heavy silence of the room. Kath was my world too, and now that world had left me behind. After those brief 24 hours in paradise, we settled right back into parallel lines. Kath was finalizing her paperwork to fly abroad for the lucrative international project, my father's reward for our compliance. Meanwhile, I entirely surrendered to the dark, forcing myself to prepare for the upcoming IVF process with Ken. Because the hospital required a family genetic history for embryo screening, I slipped into my father's private study. While searching the secure filing cabinets, a thick manila folder was accidentally dragged out alongside the medical papers. Kath, and a horrific reality completely shredded the illusion of our peaceful parting. The international project Kath was about to join was an absolute fiction. Every flowery contract was a sophisticated trap engineered through my father's immense capital. He had manipulated the paperwork to ensure Kath signed as the core legal representative of this ghost project. The moment this project was scheduled to burst, the financial fallout would collapse entirely onto her. Kath didn't just face a ruined career. She faced a long-term prison sentence in a foreign country with no one to save her. He never believed our promise to let each other go. He feared that once Kath built her own empire abroad, she would inevitably return to tear me from his cage. He wanted to butcher her future, crush her dignity, and throw her into a legal meat grinder forever. I slammed the documents onto the polished mahogany desk, the sharp crack shattering the mansion's suffocating prestige. "You're going to destroy her life just to satisfy your godplex?" I screamed, my eyes bloodshot. "Butchering her future
rigging a legal trap to throw Kath into a foreign prison? Is this how you protect the immaculate face of this rotting empire?
My father didn't even flinch. He calmly took a sip of his tea. I am cleaning up your trash, Bella. A daughter of this dynasty cannot afford a stain like her in her biography. Settle down and walk into that IVF clinic, and she will have a place to exist abroad. Otherwise, that prison cell is a cage you are building for her with your own hands.
I am done playing a part in this pathetic farce of a script. I will expose everything, I shrieked. The shattering of a porcelain tea tray right behind us cut the air clean. We both whipped around. Standing frozen in the doorway was my mother, her face completely drained of color, bloodless and hollow. The entire raw, ugly truth, my sexuality, the fraudulent marriage to Ken, and my father's psychopathic plot had hit her all at once. She clutched her chest, her breathing fracturing into ragged gasps, before she collapsed onto the hardwood floor like a snapped kite. My mother was rushed into the ICU in critical condition, her heart failing under the sudden shock. Outside in the sterile, freezing corridor of the hospital, my father stood like an immutable tyrant. He marched over and delivered a stinging, brutal slap across my face. Look at what your sheer selfishness has done. If your mother dies, you are the one who murdered her. Take one single step out of this hospital, and I will throw her into prison immediately. Right at that exact moment, Ken's lover, the heavily built bodyguard, called me in a panic, desperately breaking the news that Kath's flight had suddenly been moved up due to a schedule change. It was happening today. I collapsed onto the waiting room bench, burying my face in my hands, completely paralyzed. The invisible shackle named my mother's life anchored me to the floor. Even though my soul was screaming, even though I knew Kath was walking straight into a slaughterhouse, I couldn't leave this hospital by a single inch. Suddenly, the emergency room door groaned softly and cracked open. The physician stepped out, gesturing for me to come inside. My father darkened and made a move to force his way in, but a nurse firmly raised her hand, barring his path. I collapsed beside the bed, grasping my mother's thin, ivy-bruised hand. I've known for a long time, Bella. I saw the chasm between you and Ken. Your smiles were never real. In the beginning, I stayed silent to keep you happy, but I was wrong. You can't spend your life suffocating in this glass cage. Squeezing my hand with the last of her strength, she urged me toward the exit. Go! Run to the terminal before the clock runs out. I accept you in every single form. I just want you to be happy being exactly who you are. I burst into tears, but before I could speak, my mother shifted her gaze toward my father's silhouette behind the glass panel. Her expression suddenly turned bone-chillingly cold. I am going to divorce your father. I refuse to live with a monster who uses my failing health and an innocent girl's future as disposable pawns. Even if this divorce triggers a cataclysmic media storm and tears the conglomerate apart, I will do it. Go save Kath. I'm tearing down the cage myself. I bolted out of my mother's hospital room like an arrow, but the exact second my boots hit the main lobby, the entire exit was under absolute lockdown. Dozens of my father's black-suited bodyguards, hulking, stone-faced, and lethal, had already formed a human barricade. Miss Bella, please return to the VIP wing. The chairman has ordered that you are not to leave this facility under any circumstances. I bit my lip until it bled, bracing myself to blindly charge straight into the wall of black suits, when the violent screech of an engine tore the suffocating tension clean apart. My very own high-displacement motorcycle came flying over the steps of the entrance, but the rider was none other than Ken. Seeing me getting closed in by the guards, Ken shrieked through his open visor, his voice cracking. "Bella, get on! Move!" The moment I slipped past two stunned guards and broke through the doors, Ken immediately shut his eyes and scrambled frantically into the pillion seat, abandoning the handlebars to me. He locked his arms tightly around my waist, whimpering in a near panic. "You drive. My hands are shaking too hard to twist the throttle. Go save your Kath. Hurry up!" A smirk broke across my face. I vaulted into the rider's seat, pinning the throttle wide open. The rush hour traffic was completely gridlocked. A sea of crimson taillights stretched endlessly into the distance, choking off any escape route for the motorcycle. My father's bodyguards had caught up, the distance closing fast. "Ken, give me your phone. Start a live stream right now." Ken instantly caught on. "Everyone at the airport, please help me. Stop Kath. Don't let her board that plane. My wedding with Ken is a sham. The only one I've ever loved is Kath. For 10 years, it's always been her. None of this was fake dating. This trip is a trap by my father to throw her into prison. He wants to destroy her. I am begging you, please stop her for me. I'm throwing away this crown. I don't want the inheritance. I only want her. Kath, you are my world. I'm racing to you. Please don't leave me." The live stream exploded to 1 million views in a matter of minutes. Social media was in absolute meltdown over the billionaire heiress's shocking public plea. And then, a miracle fractured the suffocating traffic of the city. Rideshare drivers and commuters around us simultaneously looked up from their phones, staring straight at my highly distinct, roaring motorcycle. They recognized us. The entire street began to stir, and then cheers and shouts of encouragement erupted like thunder from lowering car windows. "Go get her, girl! Leave the ones behind you to us!" a tech driver screamed out. Instantly, a spontaneous wave of intervention rippled across the intersection. I watched as car drivers deliberately cut their wheels, pressing their vehicles tight against one another to form an impenetrable wall of steel, completely blocking the path of the frantic, horn-blaring bodyguard vehicles behind us. At that very moment, thousands of people at the airport were beginning a massive manhunt to hold Kath back. The motorcycle burned rubber as it screeched to a halt right outside the international terminal. I abandoned the bike on the curb, reckless and completely unstrung, charging like a lunatic inside. But the exact second I lifted my gaze to the massive electronic departures board, my boots slammed to a halt. The glowing crimson letters struck my eyes like a blade. Kath's international flight departed. I stood completely frozen in the center of the cavernous terminal, my entire frame collapsing inward. I was too late. The tears I had fiercely suppressed during the ride suddenly split wide open, blurring the entire world around me. I had lost my race against destiny. Well, well, is the cool trap girl really throwing a crying fit in a public place like this? You look absolutely hideous. A clear, melodic voice carrying a familiar, soft chuckle cut through the air behind me. Standing right there in the middle of the staring crowd was Kath. Her trench coat was draped over her arm, and a radiant smile played on her lips, her eyes crinkling with sheer mischief. "Kath, why aren't you on that plane?" Kath took a slow step toward me, letting out a soft sigh as she shrugged her shoulders. At the final second at the boarding gate, I changed my mind. I didn't want to accept a single scrap of privilege or leverage handed down by your father anymore. I realized that no matter how incredible that project seemed, the moment I took it, it would turn into a permanent liability, a weapon for him to extort you and force your compliance forever. I'd rather have nothing than let myself become the chain that keeps you locked in his cage. Before Kath could even finish her sentence, every single giant LED screen hanging in the center of the terminal, which had been playing commercial ads, and switched to replay my live-streamed breakdown from the traffic gridlock. "I'm throwing away this crown. I don't want the inheritance. I only want her. Kath, you are my world." Thousands of passengers in the lobby simultaneously looked up at the monitors, then cut their eyes directly toward the two of us. A massive wave of murmurs and gasps rippled through the crowd. Kath stared blankly at the screen, her cheeks instantly flushing crimson as she turned back to me. She tilted her head, her voice trembling slightly as she whispered, "Bella, everything you said on there, is it real?" I didn't give her an answer. I took a sharp step forward, dominant yet utterly consumed by longing, anchoring my hand firmly behind the nape of her neck to drag her into a deep, bruising kiss. It was a kiss loaded with 10 years of suppressed agony. Kath froze for a fraction of a second in pure shock, then immediately locked her arms around my neck, returning the kiss with a desperate, breathless surrender. Right behind us, tender smile broke across the bodyguard's face as he leaned down, pulling his high-maintenance rich boy into a fierce, consuming kiss right in front of the entire world. Inside the international terminal, cheers, applause, and ecstatic screams erupted all at once, the sheer volume threatening to tear the roof clean off. The entire airport dissolved into a breathtaking, chaotic symphony of happiness. The airport livestream and my defiant declaration rapidly snowballed into an unstoppable media hurricane, ripping through every social media platform with a force no corporate power could suppress. The sheer intensity of a 10-year love story sacrificing everything to claim its own destiny triggered a massive cultural shift. By the very next morning, the stock market witnessed an unprecedented sell-off. My father's conglomerate shares plummeted drastically. A fierce, relentless boycott spearheaded by the younger generation who stood firmly for love and liberation, combined with crushing pressure from institutional shareholders disgusted by his controlling, autocratic lifestyle, pushed the corporate empire into the worst reputational crisis in its history. While my father was left drowning in damage control meetings amidst a mutiny in the boardroom, my mother quietly finalized her divorce with clinical precision. She immediately established her own independent management and investment firm. Leveraging the sharp business acumen she had honed over decades within the dynasty, my mother unleashed the necessary legal leverage to expose the fraudulent nature of my father's ghost project, officially neutralizing and voiding the trap-lined contract Kath had previously signed. And at long last, our sky of freedom opened up. I moved into Kath's small, familiar apartment, starting over from zero. Watching me struggle to fold a pile of basic clothes into her old wooden wardrobe, Kath leaned against the doorframe, crossing her arms with a mischievous smirk. "Hey there, fallen bad girl. If your startup goes under, don't you worry. I'll take care of you for a while. After all, my bank account is more than enough to sponsor a washed-up trap girl like you." I froze, letting the shirt in my hand rest on the bed. I turned around, looking straight into her clear, laughter-filled eyes. I walked slowly toward Kath, trapping her back against the wall, but this time with an overarching tenderness mixed with ultimate desire. "Take care of me? Do you have any idea how high maintenance this fallen heiress can be, Kath?" Kath didn't pull away. Instead, she let out a soft laugh, wrapping both arms around my neck and pulling the distance between our faces even closer. "Do you know something, Bello? Actually, long before we even decided to spin that whole fake dating facade, I already had feelings for you. I just never had the courage to say it out loud because I was terrified. Terrified that if I confessed, I wouldn't even be able to keep my place as your friend." I froze, my heart skipping a violent beat. Kath gently traced a stray lock of hair behind my ear, her whisper falling soft against my skin. "That fake relationship gave me the perfect excuse to get closer to you without raising suspicion. And that first night we slept together, I wasn't blacked out or losing my mind from the alcohol. I knew beautifully well what I was doing, and I knew the person I was holding tight in my arms was you." I leaned down, delivering a deep, breathless, and intensely passionate kiss. No longer hindered by the time we had to spend hiding our feelings, this kiss was a beautiful release, a profound compensation for the days we almost lost each other to fate. I tasted her soft lips, feeling her familiar sweetness seep into my very soul. The sound of lively chatter and laughter filled the cozy space. This was our very first family gathering since the storm finally cleared. Seated at the head of the table, my mother watched the two of us with an expression of profound, unprecedented relief. Right next to us were Ken and his heavily built bodyguard, the two of them occasionally exchanging glances that were so sweet yet shy, making the atmosphere even more festive. The only exception was Mina, who sat with her chin propped in her hand, scanning the room before letting out a massive, dramatic sigh. "Hey, listen, this room is literally suffocating with couples energy. I came here for a family dinner, so why do I feel like my single status is glowing like a neon sign right now?" Everyone burst out laughing at her expense, prompting Mina to swiftly whip out her phone and hit the live stream button on the spot to seek rescue from her followers. Within seconds,
thousands of fans flooded the chat room, spamming hearts and rapid-fire questions. Mina scrolled through the screen, her eyes suddenly lighting up as she caught the most upvoted comment.
She immediately shoved the camera toward Kath and me. The audience is practically screaming for an answer to this one, you two. When are Bella and Kath finally making their next big move? Kath and I exchanged a glance, both of us catching the sudden spark of mischief in each other's eyes. Kath tilted her head, leaning comfortably against my shoulder, while I smirked straight into the lens. You want to know what our next move is? Fair enough. If this specific video gets 100,000 views on our YouTube channel, Fruity Story Animated, then maybe, just maybe, we'll consider revealing it. You all know what to do now. Go stream it. Mina's eyes went wide, laughing as she scolded us. Oh my god, you two! You're seriously using this moment to drive traffic to your channel? Everyone watching the live stream, did you hear that? If you want your next fix of romance, get your butts over to Fruity Story Animated right now!
After that playful banter, I gently pushed Mina's phone away, and the room dissolved into a warm, ringing chorus of laughter. I looped my arm around Kath's waist, pulling her flush against my side as I took a slow sip of wine. Scanning the happy faces around the table, a soft smile slipped onto my face. Who would have ever guessed it would all end like this? That goddamn fake dating charade was originally spun as a cunning performance to deceive the audience. But in the end, that sweet madness was never a mistake. It was the only key capable of blowing the glass cage wide open, bringing the girl I love right back to where she belonged, right here, by my side. Our relationship was never fake, because I have loved her from the very beginning to the bitter end.